came to my attention that they're going to make Warcraft 3 Reforged. This brings up the question, what is it about Warcraft 3 that makes Warcraft 3 good? This led me to the conclusion that what makes Warcraft 3 good is actually the ability to make the first thing that comes to your mind. So I thought, why don't I make a video where I make the first thing that comes to my mind? The first thing that came to my mind was a flying Night Elf Warden who's riding on a hippogriff and throws fireballs. Luckily enough for us, I'm going to clip the video so we don't have to watch me make that. So now I just made a flying warden. So let's make a new map. Now we need to give our map a name. So of course one of the most important parts of the map is its name. We're going to call this map Forever Greatness. Forever Greatness. Because it is forever great. One of the most important things is names, of course. Now we're going to talk about who is our flying warden. To make that, we're going to search the warden. But the warden's not good enough. We're going to search Maev. And then we're going to go to Maev, and we're going to copy Maev. And we're going to call her the Flying Warden. Flying Warden, however, is not a cool enough name. So we're going to call her the Huntress of Winds. Now if she is the Huntress of Winds, then she needs a name. We have to decide what will we name her, but we can name her whatever we want. So let's say that her name is Velandoria, which sounds very Night Elven, and is the first thing that came to my mind. Now we're going to go ahead and use this flying warden model, which I hacked together in about 3 minutes, using free and open source software. Now we have Maev, and we're going to go to the custom panel here, and we're going to check what is flying Maev like. Of course, flying Maev has the problem that flying Maev is not in fact a flying unit. To accomplish this, we need to go to attack targets and say that flying Maev is targeted as an air unit and has a flying height of about 300. That of course doesn't work unless we give it the flying movement type. Now we seemingly have a flying hero. This is of course very entertaining, but it does not yet throw fireballs. To do that, we need to go to the attacks. It has a hero attack and it has targets allowed. We'll probably allow it to target air units, because why not? We can give it weapon type missile so that it shoots a missile. Weapon sound is of course unnecessary when shooting a missile. Then we can choose the coolest, baddest fireball. This is of course a very difficult determination to make, but when considering all the available options that I see at the moment, I think we probably should make it throw mortar team missiles, because those are an entertaining fireball with a very high value of entertainment. Now you see it has a projectile speed, that's pretty good, but let's also check the box for projectile homing enabled. That seems all well and good, but there's probably more to be done. The range, in fact, should probably be about 600, which is a good default range for a Warcraft character. Now we have some pretty good data. Let's go ahead and do a test. Tests are, of course, one of the most fun parts of a Warcraft map. We need something to fight against, so let's try to fight this Huntress. But let's make it a hostile Huntress, so that we don't feel bad about killing it. Now we'll put it over there, and we'll see what it's like to attack this Huntress with a flying Night Elf Warden that throws fireballs. This is of course indicative of one of the great aspects of Warcraft 3. And I am victorious. We are reminded that justice will be done. Now here we have a flying Night Elf Warden, has a cool attack animation, and throws fireballs. She also has Shadow Strike, but I'm beginning to think that perhaps Shadow Strike is not good enough. So let's go back to the editor and have a little bit more fun. Presumably, along with these various things that we have, we actually don't want the human starting units. So let's go to the trigger editor and delete those starting units. The other thing is that if our flying Night Elf Warden is going to be a adventure in a forest, we of course need a forest. This means we need to click the forest button to give ourselves a bit of a forest. With that said, a forest wouldn't be a forest without some terrain tiles. So let's go ahead and add us some grass. We gotta add us some grass, you know. Give it some good grass. Can't go wrong with that. Now we got some good grass to our forest, but let's go ahead and put a little bit of dirt. Sometimes there's a little dirt around the grass. You can also merge that with some grassy dirt. Sort of a halfway between point of dirt and grass. Now that you have a lot of grass, you can try to make it look just a little bit snazzy. The environment is always the place to go when you want to add some snazz and pizzazz. Just go to the mushrooms and put in there some mushrooms. Where would we be without the mushrooms? And we'll put some shrubs, and we'll try to make sure that the environment looks as engaging as possible. Of course, even with the shrubs, you have to remember the environment is not yet fully developed. Let's go to the structures and give ourselves a little broken column, so we know that this was once a great land of great elves. That's all well and good, but we still have a series of problems. Namely, we don't yet know what is going to be the general storyline and the backstory pertaining to our Flying Night Elf Warden. Presumably, the Flying Night Elf Warden is not fighting against the Night Elves. She would not do that. Perhaps what she is actually fighting against is the people who destroyed the Night Elves. For that, we're going to have to go to the Naga folder, because the Naga destroyed the Night Elves. So, we'll start here with a Snapdragon. The Snapdragon, of course, should drop an item. The item should be very special. This item will be Kellen's Dagger of Escape, which is the most special item in the entire game. Now we have a Snapdragon that gives us a very good item. I think we're making excellent progress. Now the other thing that we need to do is head on back and put us a rock archway right here. Why, you say, do we need a rock archway? Because we do. You can go ahead and hold shift while you're placing these rocks so that they'll merge nicely with that rock archway. Put in some shrubs, and pretty soon you have a nice rock archway. To that end, we're going to want a little dirt path that goes through that archway so we know where we're going. The entire point of the archway is, of course, to laugh as our flying hero runs into this rock at the top of the archway. Someday we'll be able to build up there, but that day is not today. Now, as this path begins to fork, the player is going to have a choice. Do they go to the left, or do they go to the right? This is, of course, a difficult choice for a player, and while they sit and decide, we're going to have to give them something to look at. So we're going to put a canopy tree right here as a difficult fork in the road. Now, having done so, we have to ask ourselves, is this going to be a fun experience? We have to say that probably it is not yet, because we do not have more Nagas who are trying to kill our main character. So let's go ahead and make them hostile Nagas, and make them face in the general direction that we expect to come from. Remembering, of course, that we are a flying character. We might also want some of these trees to be up on a hill. Hills are kind of cool. Someday, hills will be all the rage. Now, one of these Nagas, of course, needs to have a percent chance to drop a Sword of 1,000 Truths. But you might find Sword of 1,000 Truths is not available, so we'll get a Searing Blade, and we'll go to that Searing Blade, and we'll make it into the Sword of 1,000 Truths. Searing Blade right here is actually now going to be the Sword of 1,000 Truths. The greatest thing about the Sword of 1,000 Truths, the greatest thing about the Sword of 1,000 Truths is that the sword can overcome your enemies with too many truths. This makes them serve you as your units. However, the Sword of 1,000 Truths is too powerful. For this reason, it's going to have a very low drop chance. Sword of 1,000 Truths will only drop in 6% of the games that you play. And you have to keep in mind that it's going to do more than what it used to do. We're going to switch to be actively used, and we're going to give it the ability Charm, which is not Chaos, which is probably Charm. There we go, ANCH. ANCH is a convenient way to type Charm, so that I didn't have to pick it off the list. Now that we have that, we have a small potential to obtain the Sword of 1,000 Truths, but it's very likely that we will not. We also see here the other Naga, and we're starting to get at the beginning of our character's story. There's also a coral bed over here, which you can fight, but if you destroy it, it'll make a giant explosion. For that, we need to make a trigger, coral bed, explosion. If the coral bed dies, we're going to have to make an explosion. You can set this by saying specifically, if this coral bed dies, make an explosion. But you might be wondering, how shall we make an explosion? The way to do this is to make a sheep and click on it too many times. So here we have a sheep. We will change its name to Explosion Sheep. The Explosion Sheep, however, when we click on it many times, is going to use the Click on Many Times ability, which is called a RNG, for RNGesus. RNGesus is the revenge ability, which makes a giant explosion when you click on a critter too many times. It represents the critter's revenge upon you. We're going to give it no model file so that you cannot see it, and it immediately explodes when it is created. In addition, it can't have a shadow, because that's just not cool. Now, as you can see, the explosion sheep exists in the data and can be created. So what we can do is say unit create one explosion sheep at that location. However, the explosion sheep is not registering in our unit list, so we have to start to wonder why that might be. But we know it's because of the tile sets, and we need to set them to all. Now that they include all, we have the explosion sheep, which we can create at the position of our dying coral bed. That's all well and good, but it didn't explode yet. So let's go ahead and issue it a command to make a giant explosion. This would of course be an order with no target, which would be a command to the last created unit to use neutral critter revenge. Once we do that, we now have a coral bed that when you kill it, makes a giant explosion. We are moving right along, and it's time to test our creation. We notice, of course, the creation is still called just another Warcraft 3 map. Now the map is started, we see that the camera is in the wrong place. So we're going to go ahead and move the default camera, which of course would be the start location, to the player's hero. That's just how it should be. We also notice that we don't particularly have a portrait on this hero, which we ought to have. So we're going to go ahead and run the application here that would get us a portrait, and load the Night Elf Warden. Now that I'm here and I've loaded the Warden, you'll see that we have the Warden portrait. And we can save this as Flying Warden 2 underscore portrait. This will of course improve the quality of our experience. So we need to import that into our map file. Very simple, very easy to do. Now I will save the map file, and we will note that I cannot save it. This is because the developers of the game in patch 1.27 ruined the way that the test map function works so that you can't do that anymore. But that's okay. I'll forgive them, because they're making Warcraft 3 Reforged. Now we're going to test the map, and you can see that I have my character, which is of course very nice, but I still have no portrait, which is actually very curious. So if we go in here and we go to the portrait, we can try to see what we can see, and ask ourselves what would be the reason that this portrait model would not have saved. The reason it didn't save is because of that issue I was talking about with patch 1.27. So you have to replace the file and save the map again, test the map again, and now it'll actually work. Don't ask. I don't really want to explain it. We'll leave that to Blizzard's engineers. Now we have Velendoria, the Huntress of Winds. But we have to ask ourselves, can Velendoria make a giant explosion by killing a coral bed? That is one of life's most important questions. Notably, Velendoria, with the amazing blink ability and the ability to throw fireballs from her flying hippogriff, lacks the ability to kill buildings with any large amount of speed. So she needs a new hero ability that annihilates buildings. Obviously, the ability that I'm thinking of would be Finger of Death. So we're just going to go in here and give her Finger of Death. Luckily enough for us, the Finger of Death ability that I chose is the wrong one and does not require a high level. This will be perfect because we do not actually want to require a high level, so we will just learn Finger of Death at level 1. This of course gives us the ability to annihilate the coral bed and create a huge explosion. That is absolutely how it should be. Thank you for enjoying this video. This has been what Warcraft 3 is really about, and I hope that you have seen from this video number 1 a good understanding and a good reasoning for why a video about what Warcraft 3 is really about should exist. Thank you.